You gonna sing?
Oh, you can go.
Huh?
You can go.
I can go.
Yeah.
Okay, bye.
I know.
Oh dear.
Her mic's
This one was off too.
That one was even off this morning.
I'm just gonna do my original. Won't you please take me back to that old-fashioned altar where it was there where I first saw the light. Well, I never
sometimes up, and I'm sometimes down. But now my feet on solid ground. When God saved me, the fire came down. But now my soul is sailing bound. Now I'm walking on solid ground. When I was lost in a sinking sand, and I had no one to help me. But one night I saw the light that when Jesus came into my life. But now my feet on solid ground. When God saved me, the fire came down. But now my soul is sailing down. Now I'm walking on solid ground. I don't have silver, I don't have gold, but I have God down in my soul. I don't have diamonds, I don't have pearls, but I'm singing and praise the world. But now my feet on solid ground. When God saved me, the fire came down. But now my soul is sailing down. Now I'm walking on solid ground. Musical podium. I remember one night at an old-fashioned meeting. I prayed to the Lord to redeem my poor soul. When I heard a sweet voice from out of my Savior, I started that night and given my own. I heard a sweet voice, so tender and calling, saying, "Arise, be saved evermore." I knew it must be the voice of my Savior, for I've not heard a voice like it before. I'm glad that I heed the voice of my Savior. I know I'm redeemed, God's wonderful grace. Someday when He calls, I'll go up to heaven. I'll enter that city and look on His face. I heard His sweet voice, so tender and calling, saying, "Arise, be saved evermore." I knew it must be the voice of my Savior, for I've not heard a voice like it before. For I've not heard a voice like it before. Praise God. Very good. Don't wear me out up here.
You're still in G. I'm not changing chords.
I wonder
So English, I tell we sin. I wouldn't let my dear Savior in. When Jesus came, my stranger in the night. Praise the Lord, I saw the light. I saw the light, I saw the light. No more in darkness, no more in night. Now I'm so happy, no sorrow inside.
like a blind man, I wandered along, worries and fears I claimed for my own. Then like that blind man, God gave back his sight. Praise the Lord, I saw the light. I saw the light, I saw the light. No more in darkness, no more in night. Now I'm so happy, no sorrow inside. Praise the Lord, I saw the light. I was a fool to wander astray. Straight is the gate and narrow the way. Now I have traded wrong for the right. Praise the Lord, I saw the light. I saw the light, I saw the light. No more in darkness, no more in night. Now I'm so happy, no sorrow inside. Praise the Lord, I saw the light.
Praise God. Someone else with a song or testimony? Patty, sing that new one you learned.
It's an A. I've heard it said that life is short, that it comes and goes, and when you'll leave this world, nobody knows. And when this life is over and I leave it all behind, I wonder what I'm leaving when I say goodbye. Do they see Jesus? Did I live as I believe? And did I point them to the Lamb of Calvary? Lord, help me live as Christ each day and be all I can be, 'cause I want them to see Jesus in me. Lord, I often wonder, what else can I do to be a good example of the truth? Take my life, Lord, use it so that others will believe. And I hope that they see you when they see me. Do they see Jesus? Did I live as I believe? Did I point them to the Lamb of Calvary? Lord, help me live as Christ each day and be all I
Someone else with a song or testimony?
You're gonna stare you down. You're gonna do troubles and trials for it, or keeper of the gate. Which one? Whichever one.
I don't know. I'll do one of them though.
Not 3 or 4.
I'm already on the verge of losing my voice. I don't know. Yeah, I think I'm gonna be an A. Troubles and trials often betray those wanting the weary body to strength. But we shall walk beside the still waters with the good shepherd leading the way. Going up home to dwell in green pastures where we shall live and die nevermore. Even the Lord will be in that number when we all reach that heavenly shore. Those who have strayed are sought by the Master. Even Christ gave his life for the sheep. Loud on the mountain, still he is searching, bringing them in forever to keep. Going up home to dwell in green pastures where we shall live and die nevermore. Leaving the Lord will be in that number when we all reach that heavenly shore. Will not heed the voice of a stranger, for he will lead us on to despair. Follow me on with Jesus our Savior. We shall all reach that country so fair. Going up home to dwell in green pastures where we shall live and die nevermore. Leaving the Lord will be in that number when we all reach that heavenly shore.
Man. Anyone else with a song or testimony? If not, we're going to turn it over to our messenger and pray for him as stands to bring the message.
It's only 6:30.
Oh, is it really?
Uh-huh.
Wow.
Good evening, everyone. If you would turn to the 143rd Psalm. Psalms 143. As I kick my shoes off here.
Pew.
Psalms 143. Amen. 143rd Psalm. We're going to start at the first verse. It says, Hear my prayer, O Lord, give ear to my supplications. In thy faithfulness answer me, and in thy righteousness. And enter not into judgment with thy servant, for in thy sight shall no man living be justified. For the enemy hath persecuted my soul, he hath smitten my life down to the ground. He hath made me to dwell in darkness, as those that have been long dead. Therefore is my spirit overwhelmed within me, my heart within me is desolate. I remember the days of old, I meditate on all thy works, I muse on the work of thy hands. I stretch forth my hands unto thee, my soul thirsteth after thee, as a thirsty land, Selah. Hear me speedily, O Lord, my spirit faileth. Hide not thy face from me, lest I be like unto them that go down into the pit. Cause me to hear thy loving kindness in the morning, for in thee do I trust. Cause me to know the way wherein I shall walk, for I lift up my soul unto thee. Deliver me, O Lord, from mine enemies. I flee unto thee to hide me. Teach me to do thy will, for thou art my God, and thy spirit is good. Lead me into the land of uprightness. Quicken me, O Lord, for thy name's sake, for thy righteousness' sake, bring my soul out of trouble. And of thy mercy cut off mine enemies, and destroy all them that afflict my soul, for I am thy servant. Amen. And that is the 143rd Psalm. But it starts out here, it says, Hear my prayer, O Lord, give ear to my supplications. In thy faithfulness answer me, and in thy righteousness. Today, church, when we pray out to God, we ask Him to hear our supplications. We ask Him to hear the prayers that we're praying, and that He might do something about it, that He might give us an answer in faithfulness and in righteousness. It says, And enter not into judgment with thy servant, for in thy sight shall no man living be justified. Enter not into judgment with thy servant, for in thy sight shall no man living be justified. Today, church, the world believes that they're justified in the way they live. They believe they're justified in the things that they choose to believe. They believe they're justified today, but it says here, and as God has said time and time again, no man living shall be justified. But it's interesting that the first half of this verse asks God not to enter into judgment with thy servant for the things that he's feeling, for the things that he's going through internally. It says, enter not into judgment. And then he goes on in verses 3 and 4 to talk about what's happened. But he asks God not to take judgment upon him for the way he's feeling, that he might help him for the way he's feeling. Sometimes, church, we get torn down by the world. Sometimes our enemies come after us day in and day out. Satan will come after us day in and day out. And it's up to us to call out to God when we get to that point where we're not feeling good anymore, when we're not feeling the Spirit as much anymore. It's up to us to cry out to God. God will hear our prayers. God will answer those prayers, even if your soul may feel weak, even if you may feel tired from having to fight the good fight. It says, For the enemy hath persecuted my soul. He hath smitten my life down to the ground. He hath made me to dwell in darkness, as those that have been long dead. Therefore is my spirit overwhelmed within me. My heart within me is desolate. That's the part that he's asking God not to judge. He's asking God not to take judgment upon the fact that his soul and his spirit has been torn down. Today, church, we have the same right to ask of God that same thing. Sometimes, and God understands that sometimes we as humans get torn down. Again, our enemies will come after us. Our enemies will tell us that we're wrong. They'll tell us that what we believe in is wrong. They'll tell us that the way that we act, the way to be a good Christian, which is by helping your brothers and sisters, helping your neighbors, they'll tell you that that's wrong. It's not wrong today, church. It's not wrong to help your brothers and sisters. It's not wrong to do the works of God that He's got for you to do. It's not wrong, but sometimes that little voice comes and talks to us. Satan will get into your head, and he'll talk to you in that little voice and say, well, you know, you just don't have to do that. You don't have to do that. He'll tell you the same thing that the world will tell you. That you're justified in not doing the works of God, that you're justified in not believing in God. But that's not the case today, church. The world will do everything. Satan will do everything to try and tear you down. And we're humans. We're fragile. Our psyche is fragile, and we, after so long of taking that torture and that punishment, get broken down. Our feelings start to hurt, as we call them. Our feelings. But inside, we start to let go a little bit. Inside, we start to feel the fire burn down just a little bit. Start to burn down to the coals. If you've ever been around a campfire, you know how the fire is if you don't keep it tended. You know that after a while of not tending the fire isn't a fire anymore. It's just a bed of coals. Sometimes you got to stir up the coals to get the fire going again. Sometimes you got to stir up the fire to keep it burning brighter, to keep it burning hotter. You got to add wood to the fire. You got to add things to the fire to keep it burning. Today, church, sometimes we as humans fall short in making sure that our fire stays well stoked. We fall short of making sure that that fire stays burning bright within us. Because again, we're human. It says no man living would be justified. Today, church, the same is true for us. Sometimes we as Christians let that fire burn down just a little bit. We let that fire burn down because we're getting tore down by the people around us. We're getting tore down by the things that we hear. There's a lot of things that go on in this world today. There's lots of mass shootings. There's lots of killings. There's lots of deaths. There's also a lot of good in this world. Not the things of the world, but that God has put into this world. And sometimes we lose sight of it. Sometimes we lose sight of the things of God. Because again, we're human. Sometimes those blinders begin to come down over our eyes. And those all the things of the world, all the things you see on the news, all the things that you hear from other people that are going on, the blinders begin to come down a little bit, and you begin to lose sight of God. You begin to lose sight of what God has in store. And God understands that. But again, it's up to us. And David knew this. David wrote this psalm. My Bible calls it the prayer of a soul in distress. And I think that's a pretty good indication of what this psalm is. The soul that's in distress, the soul that's unsure, the soul that may still come and sit in the church house but doesn't know for sure whether or not that this is really for them. It says, I remember the days of old. I meditate on all thy works. I muse on the work of thy hands. Today, church, the works of God should be our muse. The works of God, the things that God has provided in this world, we should meditate on. We should hold on to it. We should think about those things. We begin to get down. We begin to get downtrodden. We should hold on, and we should go back and think about the works that God has done in our lives. We should think about the things that God has provided for us. It says, I muse on the work of thy hands. We should. When we get downtrodden, when we get torn down, we should muse on the work of God's hands. Because He created everything today. He created you and me from the dust of the earth. But one day we might go back to it and join Him. He created this world. There's lots of pretty places in this world. I don't know if you've seen some of them, but there's quite a few beautiful places in this world. There's a lot of pretty forests. There's a lot of pretty areas for us to go. There's a lot of good things that God has provided. Again, we should muse on those things when we begin to get downtrodden. It says, I stretch forth my hands unto thee. My soul thirsteth after thee as a thirsty land. Selah. I stretch forth my hands unto thee. My soul thirsteth after thee. Church, when we begin to get downtrodden, we need to remember the thirst after God. We need to remember that fire that we had when we got up off of the altar, the day we got saved, or wherever you made your altar at. Remember the fire that was stoked within you to do God's work. Remember the feeling you had when God saved your soul and told you to get up off that altar and go and do His work. To go and do the work for Him that He may have. Today, church, we as Christians ought to thirst after Him. We ought to. We ought to hold on to that feeling, that we may never let it go. Then he asks God, he says, Hear me speedily, O Lord. My spirit faileth. Hide not thy face from me, lest I be like unto them that go down into the pit. It says, Hear me speedily, O Lord. Sometimes when we pray, we know that God's going to answer prayer later on down the line. We don't care about when. But when it comes to your soul, when it comes to this in here, not other people, not other things that are going on, but yourself, you should be asking God to hear you speedily. You should be asking God to hear your prayer immediately. You should ask God to take care of those things. It says, My spirit faileth. Hide not thy face from me, lest I be like unto them that go down into the pit. Today, church, those that go down into the pits of hell don't get to see God's face. His face is hidden away from them. God is hidden away from those in hell. We've read where those in hell have looked up and seen things going on in heaven. They've seen the good things of God going on, but God will not show Himself to those in hell. The same is true today, church, for you and I. But David asks him here, it says, Hide not thy face from me. He's telling him, reveal yourself. He doesn't mean physically show me your face. He means reveal yourself to me. Reveal your spirit to me. Exactly. Reveal what works you have for me to do. Reveal the things that you would have me to do and the things that you would want me to be. Today, church, you and I should ask God to reveal Himself to us. It says, Cause me to hear thy loving kindness in the morning, for in thee do I trust. Cause me to know the way wherein I should walk, for I lift up my soul unto thee. Church, that's the prayer we should pray. That first part, cause me to hear thy loving kindness in the morning. You ever wake up and hear the birds?
Yes.
Every morning. Every morning the birds sing a new song. Every morning when you wake up, do you hear the crickets? I've not heard as many this year, but occasionally I do hear them. You wake up and hear the sounds of nature outside your house. Show me thy loving kindness in the morning. I don't know if there's a better loving kindness than that. There is loving kindness today in the things of God. There is loving kindness in the nature that God has provided for us. At one point, when I was living out with Mom and Dad, the neighbor a couple houses down had chickens. And I think you know where I'm going with this. And they had hens and they had roosters. And every morning, about 5:30, 6 o'clock, those roosters would get out there and they would scream their heads off. Every morning. And at first, I wanted to go out there and shoot them chickens so we could eat them. then I began to think about it, began to ponder on it a little while. It took me a little while, it took me a few days, but I finally came to realize that those hens and those roosters knew exactly when the day was starting every day. God provided them that ability to know when a new day was starting. And He told them to tell the whole world about it, regardless of whether or not we wanted to hear it at 5:30, 6 o'clock in the morning. But those hens and those roosters, they know. The animals know when the day begins and when the day ends. You and I, church, know when the day begins and when the day ends. But God has provided them with that same knowledge. God has provided the animals with some sense of knowledge to know the things that they need to know. And even though them roosters would have been real good to eat, I began to hear the loving kindness of God in their crows every morning. I began to hear God talk to me about them roosters down the road. Say, listen to them. Every morning, when those roosters wake up, the first thing they do is they come out and they greet the new day. They know that the day is starting. They know that it's time to get up and to do the things that a rooster would do, which is to eat seed and for the hens to poop out some eggs. But they knew every morning because God gave it to them. God gave them the job of waking up the entire neighborhood, which I sometimes wish He hadn't, because I would have liked to have slept in a little longer. But every morning, when I'd lay in bed and I'd hear them roosters, I'd go, thank you, Lord, for the loving kindness of showing us another day, of showing us another day that we might go out and do the works, that we might go out and stoke our fires a little bit, that we may go out and burn brighter today than we did yesterday. And at the end of the day, that we may go to bed knowing that we did a better job today than we did yesterday. But if you hear the birds in the morning, you hear the crickets at night, God will show you His loving kindness because He provides for them the same He does for you and me. He provides for the animals the same way He does for you and me, church. Whether that's through their own means or whether that's through a human feeding them. He provides for those animals. He knows what those birds need. He knows what the roosters need. He knows what each and every animal on this earth needs first thing in the morning. He knows. It says, for in Thee do I trust. Cause me to know the way wherein I should walk, for I lift up my soul unto Thee. He's asking him here, show me the way. Show me the way that I need to walk today. Show me the way that I need to act today around people. Show me the way to be a better Christian today. Show me the way is what he's asking God here. He says, I give my soul unto Thee. Today, church, and each and every day, we should be giving our soul to God. We should allow God to be in control. We should allow God to deliver us from the things of this world, from the evil. It says, deliver me, O Lord, from mine enemies. I flee unto Thee to hide me. There's the old song, Rock of Ages, hide Thou me. The Rock of Ages is God. The Rock of Ages is Jesus Christ. And when our enemies come our way, when the things of this world come to tear us down, when Satan tries to get in our ear, church, we should flee unto God. God is our refuge. God will protect and provide for each and every one of us in our time of need. It says, I flee unto Thee to hide me. Church, we should have the faith to know that God will hide us from whatever problems may be coming our way. That He will take us and shield us from any of those things. Verse 10 is really the one that stood out to me. It says, teach me to do Thy will, For thou art my God. Thy spirit is good. Lead me into the land of uprightness. Teach me to do thy will. For thou art my God. Thy spirit is good. Lead me into the land of uprightness. Today, church, that should be our prayer as Christians. That should be our prayer each and every day. Teach me to do thy will. Because many times we as people have our own will inside of us. We have our own thoughts and opinions on how to do things. But when it comes to God, you've got to listen to Him first. You've got to listen to Him first, not yourself. When it comes to God, His opinion is what matters. It's why we ask Him to teach us to do His will, not our own. Because we don't know the needs of others. We don't know how the things of this life are supposed to go. We don't always understand that what we're doing for God may have bigger effects for other people down the road. I'll give you an example. If God tells you to pray with somebody in the store, you run into them, they tell you what's going on, and God tells you to pray with that person right there, you've got two options. You can either stand there and pray with them, or you can tell them that, well, I'll be praying for you, and walk on. If you stand there and pray with them, which usually is the way God tells you to go, another person might hear that. Multiple people might hear that. And that might have been the seed that they needed planted. That would be God's will. But if you were to leave them, say, well, I'll be praying for you, and you go and walk on, all those seeds that you would have planted are gone. They're not there because you didn't take the time to do things as God would have you to do. If God tells you to do something, you ought not to ask Him, well, why do I have to do this? Why does it have to be me? You say, okay, Lord, whatever you require from me. Not our will, because if it was our will, I'm sure a lot of us, well, maybe not us, but a lot of Christians in general would say, well, I'll be praying for you, and they'd want to walk on and go finish their grocery shopping. They'd want to walk on and leave them hanging there. They'd want to walk on and allow God's goodness and His kindness to pass over all those that would have gotten it if you'd have just stood there and prayed with them. There are a lot of Christians today that would say, well, I'll be praying for you, and just walk on. When God tells you to do something in a specific way, you ought to do it. Because you might not know who you're going to touch around you. You might not know what seeds you're going to plant in the people that are around you. And you may never see any of those people again. You may never see any of those strangers again around you. But that seed that you planted was what got them started. That seed that you planted by standing there and praying with somebody. That's just my example. There are many other things that we could do. But all those seeds that they'd miss out on, you'd miss out on the blessings. It's not about that. But you will. If God tells you to do something and you don't do it the way He asks you, you'll miss out on the blessings for it too. You'll miss out on the good things that God's got in store for you after the fact. They used to say, if I tell you to jump, you ought to ask how high. Today, church, the same is true for God. When God tells you to jump, you ask Him how high He wants you to jump. Not why. Not, well, are you sure it's really my job to be jumping? No, you ought to just jump. You ought to take the leap of faith, as I've heard it called. The leap of faith. Well, why do we call it that? Why do we call it a leap of faith? Nobody seems to know. So I'll tell you. Why is it a leap of faith? Because you're standing on the edge. God's got you ready. God's got you standing on the edge of the cliff. God's got you ready to go. He's giving you the parachute. He's giving you everything you need. He's got you, if you're doing a bridge jump, they tether you. But I'm thinking at the edge of a cliff. You're standing there. God's got you ready to go. And all you have to do is take the step over the edge and go. That's as far as we need to do. You just have to step out. I've never skydived before. I've seen enough videos of it to know I'm not going to do it. Even if somebody pays and signs me up to do it, I'm not skydiving. I'm good. But you have a decision to make when you get up in the plane. You have a decision to make when you're up in the air. Am I going to allow this person that's strapped onto me to push me out of this plane? Or am I going to tell them, no, I don't want to do this. I changed my mind. Church, let him when it's God, let him give you the kick in the pants. Let him push you out of the plane. Let him push you over the edge and take the leap of faith. Because God will catch you each and every time. You won't hit the ground. I've seen a couple skydiving videos where I thought the person was going to hit the ground before they got that chute open. But God will take care of you. If He's asking you to jump over the edge, if He's asking you to take the leap of faith, that parachute will open in time.
Yes, it will.
He'll make sure that parachute opens in time. He'll make sure that you make it safely back down to the ground. He'll make sure that you're safe after each and everything, after each and every leap of faith. But we get to the edge, and we look over, and we see the bottom, and we go, whoa, wait a minute. Hold on a minute now. I don't know that I want to take this leap. That looks pretty far down there. That looks like it's a ways off. But church, if you would just listen to God, you don't have to worry about that ground down there. You don't have to worry about it because He's got the parachute ready to go. It's strapped to you. If you take that leap of faith, He'll make sure that both feet touch the ground in a soft and calm manner. It's not going to be any hard landing. He'll make sure that you're taken care of all the way down. It says, lead me into the land of uprightness. Today, church, we need to be led. We need to be led in the ways of God. We need to be led in the things that He would have us to do. And if we do, if we listen to God, He'll lead us into that land of uprightness. If we hold true to our faith, if we hold true to the things of God, when our time is done here on this earth, when it's time for us to go, He'll lead us into the land of uprightness. Yep. He'll lead us into heaven, saying, welcome in, my good and faithful servant. I'd rather hear that than to hear the other option. I'd rather hear, enter in, my good and faithful servant, than to hear, depart from me, you worker of iniquity, for I never knew you. It says, quicken me, O Lord, for thy name's sake, for thy righteousness' sake, bring my soul out of trouble. Now back when this was wrote, and when it was translated, the words quicken me, what did it mean to quicken somebody? Well, it didn't mean to make them faster. It didn't mean to make them run any faster. I can't run that fast, and if God tried to quicken me, I'm sure He could. But I might look a little silly. I don't think I could run that fast. But quicken me really means quicken me out of the trouble. Be quick to bring me out of the trouble. Make it quick. Don't allow me to stay here any longer. Don't allow me to stay where my heart is downtrodden, where the fire has burned down to the coals. Quicken me. It means bring me out of it. Bring me back in to what you would have me to do. It says, for thy name's sake, For thy righteousness' sake, bring my soul out of trouble. Today, church, sometimes we have to pray our way out of trouble. It's another old song that gets sung every once in a while. We sometimes have to pray our way out of trouble. We have to talk to God and ask Him to bring us out of it, to quicken us out of it, that we might not have to endure. But sometimes we as Christians get ourselves into trouble. We do. Be truthful about it. Be honest. We as Christians get ourselves into trouble sometimes because we listen to ourselves. Because we're not listening to God. But if we would just pray the prayer, ask God to bring us out of trouble, ask God to take away the afflictions that we might have, to take away all the bad things, He'll do it each and every time. It says, and of thy mercy cut off mine enemies, and destroy all them that afflict my soul, for I am thy servant. And of thy mercy cut off mine enemies, and destroy all them that afflict my soul. Today, church, if we would ask for God to take care of the problems in our life, to take care of the people who consider themselves our enemy, consider themselves the enemies of the Christian church, and ask Him to take them away, that He would. The real lesson here is that a lot of times when we begin to get like this song, when the coals are the only thing left burning, when we get downtrodden, and we begin to get hurt, we begin to forget that we just need to ask God to take care of us. We forget that we need to have our faith in God. We forget that if we would just ask in His name, He would take care of it. He said if you had the faith of a grain of a mustard seed, you could move mountains, church. Yep. Clearly, we as Christians today don't have that kind of faith, because I've not been seeing any mountains move lately. Last I checked, the mountains have stayed in the same place for the last couple thousand years. But if we would just ask God to take the afflictions, to take the infirmities away, to take away and to get us away from our enemies, in His name, that He would do it. But when we begin to get like that, we forget. We think, well, what can I do for myself? What can I do for myself? How can I take care of this myself? And the answer is you can't. The answer is that you cannot fix those problems. You need to allow God the room to work. You need to allow God to come in and take over. You need to allow God to move all the trouble away, to take it all from you, and to take it upon Himself, because He will. We've been told time and time again that if we have an infirmity, if we have an affliction in this world, if we have a thorn in our side, that if we would pray to God, that He would take care of that. Paul, I believe, had a thorn in his side for 7 years. We're not told whether that was an actual thorn or if that was something or someone who was causing him problems. This is where my opinion comes in, and this is about all the opinion you're going to hear out of me on this one. But I truly believe it was a something or a someone. I don't believe it was an actual thorn in his side. It was a something or a someone that was causing him problems, that was causing him issues in his walk with Christ, that was causing him to stumble in his faith. For 7 years, Paul dealt with it. Paul prayed on it. He asked God to take it away from him. He asked God that if it be His will that He take away the thorn in His side. It took God 7 years, but He was right on time taking it away from Him. He wasn't late. As we just sung earlier tonight, Jesus is always right on time. God will always be right on time. May not feel right to us, may not feel like the right time to us. We may feel like, well, God, you're taking too long. God, you're taking too long to do something. God, you're taking too long to act. The disciples told Jesus that they were a 4 days journey away, that they wouldn't make it to Lazarus in time. He'd be well dead and gone. He said, it'll be okay. On top of the fact that they stayed another 4 days, if I remember correctly. That's 8 days, church. That is over a week. But they got there on that 4th day of travel. And Jesus told Lazarus to come out. Jesus told Lazarus to come out. He was right on time. Lazarus didn't need to come back 4 days earlier. Lazarus needed to come back at that time because there was a crowd, because there was a group of people around who needed to see God's work in action. There's another one of Jesus walking past a funeral procession. I don't remember if this one's in the Bible or if this one's just something I've heard preachers say. It's in there. He walked past and the girl raised, I believe. Yeah. I couldn't remember if it was a boy or a girl, but yes. Jesus Christ walking by a funeral procession is on time. He did it at that exact moment. That child raised from the dead right then and there. Healthy as could be. Why? Because that was the time and place for it. If Jesus had gone to visit with that family right after the boy or girl had died and raised them then, only the family would have seen it. But as he's walking by the funeral procession, we've seen funeral processions. I'm sure each and every one of us has at some point. I agree, too many. But imagine you're on the way to the graveyard and Jesus walks by, and I just about bet that those hearse drivers might come out of their seats. But that person would be alive again. That person would come back to life because that was the time and the place for it. Today, it's not as it used to be. Used to, they had to carry the body. They didn't have cars. They didn't have all the nice things that we've got today. We do them in our cars today. They had to physically carry the body back then. So you could imagine the shock on everybody walking to the gravesite to bury the child. And the child sits up. And the child is normal. Doesn't look all weird and mangled. Doesn't look like a zombie like you'd see in the movies. Fully back to life and cleansed of all ailments. You'd about guess that everybody in that funeral procession would almost come out of their skin. I know I would. There was a couple I thought, well, we ought to be real careful, because if we're not careful, they're going to pop up out of that casket and we might not have a good time. They might pop up out of that casket and we're going to have to ask some questions of what's going on. But church, when you ask it of God, it'll be in the right time. When you ask it of God, He'll take care of it in His time. Again, not on our own, not in ours, but in His. If we would just do what He's got for us to do today. When we get downtrodden, if we would just ask Him to take care of it. We would just ask Him to take it away from us. If we would ask Him to stoke the fire back up inside of us a bit. to take care of whatever is causing us to doubt, whatever is causing us to feel down. He will, each and every time. Again, it may not be in our timing. You may have to hold on to it for 7 years, like Paul did. But in the end, God will answer prayer. God will make sure that He sees you through it. God will make sure that you will get through it. If you'd only just trust and believe in Him. If you've got something that you need to talk to God about today, come to the altar and pray. Pray in your seats. You may not make it out the doors. And if you do, you may not make it home. And even if you make it home, you may not make it to tomorrow morning. Do it now before it's too late. If you'll get us a song.
Page number 158 in the Red Book, 158. It's in D. Time is filled with swift transition. Not of earth and move can stand.
saving my soul and for the messages today. It was my favorite music this week.
Praise God. To be anyone else, anything on your heart?